Hi everyone, and welcome to the Filmmaker Q&A for Shorts Block 7. It is Sunday of the 25th anniversary of H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, and I am joined with some of the filmmakers in this fantastic Shorts block. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I'm going to go around and introduce you. We've got Catherine Jones from Hatchlings, Ura, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, from Be Careful What You Say from Turkey. Catton's in New Mexico. We've got Michael Alexander Ishello from The Man Who Became Everything. Mm-hmm. And you're in Canada?
Yes, Toronto, Canada.
Toronto. We've got Nick Cole and Christopher Price from Viscous. And Nick, you're in Manchester, and Chris, you are in. Tell us where you are.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. Okay. Well, welcome and fantastic job on your films. Congratulations. They're all really excellent. One of the things we try to do when we put our shorts blocks together is give the audience kind of a variety, so they're not just watching the same kind of film over and over again. And it always amazes me just the range of styles and tones and period looks and sound design and things that we get from from cosmic horror films. When you're making, well, first question, are you all horror film makers? Like, do you consider yourself a horror filmmaker?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would put myself into that umbrella, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always, it's like that term, as was spoken about in actually one of the panels today, between horror and terror, and then the difference between those two words. And the whole idea now with the word horror being somewhat trashy and a little underrepresentative of what I think we all try and do. So when you tell someone you're a horror filmmaker, they don't quite get what you mean. They have an idea, but it's always in this B category or this thinner lined piece of work. So I mean, it's like, as much as I'm a horror filmmaker, it's just like, am I a horror filmmaker, or do I just enjoy making people experience fear or something like that, right?
This is my first horror film. I love the horror genre. I always have. And so I'd like to make more horror films. Like I've been a dilettante, really. I've made things in very different genres. So yeah, I'm a huge horror fan.
Nice.
I'm the same. This is my first horror film as well.
Ah.
My first proper film, really, since I did some student shorts at university 5 years ago, but then this is my first proper film, and yeah, horror all the way. Love it.
Amazing.
So when you're writing your script, did you have kind of a setting and a tone or a look or a color grade in mind when you were writing your script? Let's start with Christopher and Nick.
Well, for me, I don't know for how everybody else's filmmaking journey has been through this time. I felt at the beginning of making Viscous that it had to be like the mini feature. I don't know if everybody feels like at some point it's like, all right, I'm at this stage in my career. I want to make something at this level that can kind of represent that. And initially when I wrote the script, it was a behemoth. It was like a 29-page, 30-page film that I really thought I was going to be able to, get all of that onto the screen. And as production went on and we actually were able to shoot a portion of it, I realized that I had to cut back tremendously on that and kind of boil and simmer down what the story was. So it was a very unique transition from the initial idea through production to ultimately what everybody got to see today.
Nice. There's actually a question for you in the chat, and that is, the set at the end of your film was reminiscent of a Dexter episode, including the lighting. Are you a Dexter fan?
Actually, you know what? I have a ton of Dexter friends who love the show, and they actually had told me some things about it, but I never watched it myself. The inspiration for the end sequence, which is very different visually from the first 3 or 4 minutes of the film. It's a lot more dynamic. There's more use of color. The inspiration for that was the fact that this is a place that is almost like a portal. It's almost like a ceremonial, ritualistic place where we can have evil things come from a chest, which is what happens in the short. But it was not directly inspired by the great series of Dexter, unfortunately.
Okay. And Nick, I'm sorry, you're from There's Someone in the Garden. I totally messed that up. So with your film, the same question, did you have kind of a setting or a feeling or a tone in mind when you were writing the script?
Yeah, so mine was a bit similar. Like I went through different stages of, when I first wrote the script, it was, again, like a really grand idea. I think there was about 5 or 6 different characters. A hotel was involved. And it was kind of like, when I was writing the draft, I got to like 20 pages and I was just like, how am I ever going to film this? And then it got to a point where, because the film that I eventually did make was all self-financed through family, friends, and just like me and my girlfriend just put in whatever money in we could. So I got to a point where I had like writing sessions with a couple of friends, and we sat down and said, what can I actually afford to film? Let's strip it back and make it filmable. But I think I wrote the first draft of this a few years ago, and then just like eventually came back to it. But the premise was always the same of, it was always going to be called There's Someone in the Garden. And it was always a magician, a book, and he raises a demon. So that was just like the core aspects of, right, what film can I make that I can afford to make that involves a magician who wakes, like, raises a demon from a book. But from writing the scripts, there was always, like, for the color grading aspect, the room was always going to go red when the demon was about to kill Amazo. So like from there, in my head, I had like visually the colors I wanted. I knew like I wanted the room to kind of be like a warmish tungsten glow, then blue moonlight, blue on my laptop screen, and then just like blood red. I kind of got the red from Mandy, the Nicolas Cage film Mandy. Like that was like with the color grader. I was just like, that's the red I want. So that was just always in my head. But yeah, it was kind of just a big idea and then strip it down to a filmable thing.
Smart. It looked really great. And that I feel like that's a pitfall of some, you know, when you're trying to make a short film and you want to make, you know, put everything into it, that sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, what can I actually accomplish here?
There was a few things that I had to cut that I really didn't want to. And I was just like, oh, that'll look so cool, but I don't have £1 million.
So if you had the money, what did you have to cut out?
There was a sequence. Well, initially I wanted a bigger garden, and then there was a shot that I actually tried to do on the night in camera, and it did not look good. There was a shot where the demon, when he first comes out of the garden, is supposed to be at the very back, and then a car drives past, and the headlights of the car sort of silhouettes the demon from behind, but we see it through the window in the background. And then another car goes past in the opposite direction, almost half a second later, and the demon's right up at the window. So it was kind of like a abnormal supernatural movement kind of thing. And then we tried doing it in camera with my friend played the demon. It was just my friend in a suit. And then I wore a second suit, and we tried to do it where he ducked down and I jumped up. And then when I got into the edit, I was just like, oh, you could just see us both, and that looks awful. Yeah. And then there was just like, I think a few more things, just like visual effects things, or just, I wanted an exorcist shot with the demon as well, but that wasn't possible either. Just things like that I had to just.
You're name dropping like the best films right now in our genre. Yeah.
Kat, you go.
Okay. All right. So my husband wrote the script, I directed it, and I'm in it. And it came from, he's an author, he was starting his next novel and got 60,000 words into what you saw on screen. And it was like the prequel to a larger story. And he got stuck on this novel and literally just put it away. And I remember when he was researching like what a succubus was. And he's like, you know, it's based off of that. And a lidric, I don't know if I'm going to say that right, which is like a Norse demon creature with a beak and like talons and all these things. And that all sort of came into hatchlings. And he's like, what if we make this? And originally it wasn't set in the Korean War era. It was originally set during World War II. But like all of us as independent filmmakers, we only had so much for budget. And we thought, okay, let's shoot it at your grandma's house, which looks like someone press paused in 1968. So we didn't have to like set deck that much. And there was even some clothes still in the attic that we could use. So we really were fortunate with that. And it was mainly the one location. So that was our inspiration. And we wanted to, every time someone's desires, that succubus energy was starting to evoke like their energy, we wanted like that color scheme to come through. So everyone had a distinct color to their desire, to their interest. And I know we've got a couple questions in the chat here. I'm going to answer the one about narration. So for those of you who've seen Lord of the Rings, like with Cate Blanchett narrating like the opening, like that's what we were going for with our short. So it is very story, like story fairy tale, like you're being like led through it the whole time. So that was definitely on purpose. And part of the inspiration was like, when Adam handed me the script, my husband, he's like, hey, watch this beginning of Lord of the Rings again. This is what we're going for. Like, okay, let's see if I can do that. But we did our version of that. And we shot last January and last February of 2019, and it was so cold. So if you like see those shots of the river with the character Euclid finding the chest that has the egg in it, there's ice there, and our DP was amazing. He was in like a huge like onesie that was like uber warm, and then waders, like fishing waders that you zip into that are rubber, and like got in there with his red dragon. And then the other question is what other genres I've worked in. I mean, I've made a romantic comedy LGBTQ film. I've done an all women World War II film. I've made a transformational media film about what is Ohm. And now I've made Hatchlings, which is my sci-fi horror. So I love horror. I think it's Guillermo del Toro. He has a really great article in one of the Movie Maker articles talking about horror is like just this last like vestige of like creativity in like bringing like the truest emotion out of the audience, like because no one has to laugh at your piece, no one has to care about your drama, but can we evoke that interest of fear and curiosity? Like it's I know people poo-poo sometimes, like you said, Michael about horror, but I think it's like, oh, it's way more than they think.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, yeah, the only people who say things like that about horror are people who don't watch horror. Don't get it. I was just thinking about how like we have to have a term now for prestige horror to make it sound like it's not like, drive-in movie trash. Like A24, I think. I don't know who coined that term, but it came around with like Hereditary, The Witch, and now like The Lighthouse and Blackcoat's Daughter and stuff like that. And I'm like, huh. Like when I was a kid, we just put that all in the horror category. All these kids with their fancy terms. Bura, how about you with your film? Because there's kind of a shift in the color grading. Is that something that you did kind of on purpose or as you got onto set?
Yes, first we inspired from the real story in our country, in our Mesopotamian myth. Maybe you know that Hecate, it's an ancient goddess from Greek myth and Mesopotamian myth. And our friend tells a story about Hecate's myth and girls disappearing. Maybe it's real or not, we don't know yet. But I'm inspired beginning of the script. Then, and I want to make a horror film, a local myth, about the local myth. So I wrote that, and it's a lucky movie because we shoot beginning of the pandemic outbreak. It's so hard. We finished the shootings after that, after 1 day left. Beginning the outbreak, we did all post-production from our houses when the outbreak began. So it's a hard situation for all the crew. The color shifting, it's near purposely, we can say that about, because it's a normal day in the Dover in the working station, but after the ancient god wakes up in the movie, all the color changing with the ancient goddess. Sorry for the English,
okay.
because you are all native speakers, and I'm little excited about the live
It's okay.
stream.
So once Hecate shows up, she changes
Excuse
the
me?
whole world. Once the goddess shows up in your film,
Yes,
her presence changes the color scheme of the world.
yes, and it's not all about the horror. It's about the worker rights, because the boss is angry and not fair, and the goddess knows that, and trick the man easily. Then all the horror begins.
So it's something that he brought on himself.
Yes.
And there's a question for you. I think you answered this pretty well. Like what filmmakers have inspired and influenced you? And with this
What
film,
filmmaker?
you were inspired by the stories from your country, but are you also influenced by horror filmmakers from other countries?
I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter, Wes Craven, and James Wan, I think, and also a new filmmaker, Ari Aster. All of them, it's a little bit mixing in the movie, I think.
Nice.
Generally.
And Michael, how about you? When you're writing a script, do you have a did you film your piece on film?
Yes, Super 16. Yeah,
Super 16. Okay.
it was the first. Yeah, which was,
Did you know you were going to shoot on that when you started out?
honestly, so with this film, it was strange because we had done it only because of the state of emergency that had happened in Canada. So that was announced, and I was in the shower. I'm thinking, okay, I need to make something. I need to make something. This is an opportunity. And I texted a writer friend of mine. He had written the script. Then I contacted a cinematographer friend of mine, wanted to see if he was available. And with 5 people, we were going to make this Lovecraftian, fear of the unknown, extremely, unmeasurable being. Because I knew I've been trying to make a short where the actual this entity is so large you don't even see it on screen, and that with this aim and this goal, we decided to make the film, and then creatively decided to go with Super 16 because it was so cheap, because no one was selling equipment where, because they were out of business, everything was shut down. So we were able to get things for an insanely low price. And then creatively, we know we wanted to capture the deadness of the streets of Toronto. It was extremely eerie, and being a fan of made films and wanting to do that, I thought this was the best opportunity from a cost and creative standpoint. And we decided to take the risk. We wanted it to be ambitious. We didn't want to half-ass it, so to say. And we were pretty proud of what came out of it. But it was terrifying. I mean, we thought we messed up quite a few times because of it being our first time shooting on film. Yeah, we thought the whole film was out of focus halfway through. Everything was practical lighting. It was terrifying. When we saw the film come back, and we had a certain amount of film, so that was another challenge that you don't even think of. No monitor, and super incognito because we had no permits. So we're not supposed to be outside. So it was challenging, and we wanted it to be ambitious, and creatively, with our themes, it worked, and we believed in it, and that's where it came to be.
How did you edit that?
So funny thing is because we had so little footage, everything was basically in one take. it practically edited itself when you do the scan, because it all cuts into each other, which was really neat to see. But editing it was fun. We got the scan, got it back. It was all kind of already laid out there like an assembly, because it's all part of the same reel. And we simply just cut where it needed to be cut. Some of them, it cut itself. Like I didn't even do a cut. It just, dips to white and it does it for you. But we threw it on Premiere and worked on it through, obviously, digital software. Yeah.
There's a question for everyone here, and what was the most fun part of making your film? I'm going to start with Kat.
I knew you would.
I'm just going to go in order now.
Okay. God, what was the most fun? It was so much work. I mean, it was so stressful. Okay. The most fun, I really had fun making my best project. Like I'll go with what Christopher was saying with like trying to level up with what you're doing and meeting your own, like it's, I think it's David Bowie who says that like we're meeting our next project when you are walking into a pool of water and you don't feel your feet touch. It's that moment where you feel your feet leave from the ground and you're a little scared, but you're like, I've been given this idea. What am I going to do with it? Is it going to go into the collective unconscious to someone else and they'll make it, So it was the most challenging thing I've ever done. And just taking those moments of taking the director hat off, taking the actor hat off. I did crafty. I sometimes did hair, it's indie filmmaking, and like really stood back. It's like, oh, this thing's happening. And we're actually doing this thing that was the hardest thing I've ever made. And it's I don't know if anyone's ever made a film with their partner, but you want to like go to bed at night, like, hey, good job. Hey, good job. We're still good. So that was probably the best victory, was working with my husband and like, we want to make more movies together. That's also it.
Thank you. Bura, what was the best, like the most fun part of your film, making your film?
In this film, we making this creature hand makeup before the scene, and we have to walk at night to the train for the shooting, and everyone looks to us, what the hell is going on with this makeup or something. And in the train also, many people looked at us and asked or they run away from us little kids. It's a tricky and funny situation in our film.
Oh, there was a question for you. Like when did the quarantine begin in Turkey?
In March.
In March, okay. I think
Yes.
that was about the same time here. It was like middle of March.
Middle of March, yes. We done the shooting middle of March, like March 15, and then quarantine begins. Began.
It seems like a million years ago.
Yes.
How about you, Michael? What was the most fun part of making your film?
Finishing it, I think. No, but definitely, because the production itself was grueling. We shot it in 10 days. Well, written, produced, like everything was done in 10 days. Just the editing. The post-production took, I think, another 7. But the funnest part about it, I think, would have been between the location scouting and finding these really neat spots in Toronto and starting to write as you find locations. So yeah, we had this script, we had this blueprint, but we definitely relied on intuition and our own like artistic impulses throughout. And if we had an eye for something, we believed in it and would adjust accordingly. And that really helped. And that it was in every single area, with acting, composing, and that's where I would probably say the other most fun part was in the score and composing, or Patrick, the composer, being with him when we did the soundtrack. That there's nothing like putting sound to film, because we didn't have any recorded sound. So we were so used to watching this dead silent movie because there was no location audio, and then making all these little sound bits come to life from things as small as footsteps to breathing and overall just hum and atmosphere, it made it a whole new movie, a whole new writing process. And I really enjoyed that. It was, we were up for night until the AM of many nights doing that, and that was worth it.
Nice. How about you, Nick?
I think two parts of fun. Like the most fun was probably the actual shoot, when we, after all the planning and writing and things, just seeing that first shot on the monitor, you just think, oh, I'm actually making a movie now. This is awesome. So definitely that. And then the whole shoot was great. It was quite, we shot two days, but there were 2 night shoots from like 4 p.m. till 4 a.m. But they were like, 12, 13, 14 hour days for 2 days. It was quite intense, but it was awesome. I loved it. And then actually last year, I went to a horror film festival called Grimfest in Manchester. I don't know if anyone's heard it.
Yeah.
My friend Short was playing in it, and then I was speaking to a post-production company who had one of the stalls, like one of the vendors, and I actually won from them. I entered a competition, and I won a free color grade and sound mix from them. So I ended up going and getting a like professional grade and sound mix, which was awesome. Because again, like you were saying, Michael, it's just awesome putting sound to film. Like I was doing a lot of the sound design myself, just like in my living room, and then actually getting with a sound designer / mixer, and then him going over it, and then us actually doing. He ended up doing a 5.1 mix on it.
Right.
I got into the booth and I shouted some of the bit where he says daimonium, and there's about 20 voices laid over it. I'm about 6 of them. That was cool. But yeah, just seeing like a professional sound mix and color grade on the film is awesome. Yeah, that was probably nice.
There was a question for you in the chat about the fishing line and what the inspiration for that was.
It was, I think it was just kind of, so when I was coming up with the idea, the actual YouTube live or Magician's Hub, I didn't want to use YouTube, the live video that he was doing was like a very late aspect of it. I was kind of just thinking, how can I just make it kind of like this, like modernish, I guess. Like, how can I make a magician? What would a magician do in 2019? He'd do a YouTube live video, because everyone does YouTube. So then I was just like, if he's raising the dead, I think we came up with it by he can't just read the book and expect nothing to happen. He must have a reason for reading the book, because the character doesn't realize he's actually going to raise the dead. So then we were like, what about if he just had a skeleton on the floor, and then he's got these cables, and he's like pulling on these cables, pretending, so like he's pretending to do a grand hand gesture, but he's actually sneakily pulling on the cable. He doesn't do it that sneaky, but it's quite funny. And then a skeleton pops up into the frame. So it was kind of just a silly, like funny thing to put in, to be like, he knows he's not going to raise the dead, but he's got to do something for his audience. And there was actually a sequence that we ended up cutting that was, I think it was a bit like, have you seen Shaun of the Dead, Edgar Wright? You know, that fast sequence where he's just making a cup of tea and buttering some toast, and it's all like quick cuts and quick pans. We did that with going up the fishing wire, and we actually like made a whole pulley system on the ceiling with like little wheels and all sorts of stuff. And we did like a quick sequence like that. But then when we put it into the movie, it just didn't fit with the pacing, so I had to take it out. But yeah, it was just kind of a silly little thing to throw in there.
And how about you, Christopher? What was the most fun part of your film, making your film?
Well, there were some really excellent answers from everybody else, and I'm kind of going to pick a few of them out and use them for myself to a point. Like, filmmaking is very, 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 very hard and almost masochistically fun, where in and of doing it, you exhaust yourself, you push yourself to your limits, if you're making a good film, that is. And that I would not necessarily call like fun, but as far as like 2 things that always stick out in my mind, and I know that Kat and Nicholas can relate because they kind of touched on it, which is, one is the initial idea, when it first starts to blossom in your head, and there's that excitement of, am I going to actually commit to this idea and see it through? So that's one of the most fun times, because there's no real work yet. You're still only in your imagination. It's like the fun and games part of, I think, filmmaking is just coming up with all the cool stuff. And then there is, in the midst of the chaos, you're like 5 shots in on your day. You're, you know, an hour before lunch. For me, it was our effects day. We have like buckets of goo, and one of my good friends, shout out to Johnny Mocktig, who was the monster. We were like dumping it onto him in like a kiddie pool right before the shot. And, you know, the DP's doing his thing, everybody's doing theirs. And there's like a weird moment where you kind of look around and you're like, damn, this is all coming together. This is pretty dope. This is amazing. And just a few months ago, it was an idea in my head and it was nothing else. And that kind of almost like military operation, being amongst all of the action, yet still kind of finding a moment of reflection. That's what I enjoyed the most.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about the creature design and the concept
Tarman?
behind it? Tarman.
Yeah. Well, I originally came up with the idea, just what if, and all horror film monsters of some kind started with a what if of some kind, which is what if there was a demon who looked like he had just gotten out of a hot, steamy pile of tar. But it's a perpetual nature, like it's kind of just coming from within somehow. It's just pouring off of its body. And that visual on screen is what I think initially got me in love with the idea of this being the monster, is that's practical. I can have a person do that, and I don't have to spend money on effects or anything of that nature. We did do some post stuff to the film, but just the idea and the frightening idea that this is something that is like us, but also repulsively unlike us. So yeah, that was probably the origin of that.
Nice. I really liked how spare the story is in terms of exposition. You just really show everything, and
yes,
I don't have to explain a lot.
I didn't want to dumb it down for people, and I wanted it to be either a multiple watch film where if you pay attention to the specific words of dialogue that are said, you can carry that over into the next viewing of it and appreciate it more. Thank you very much for noticing that. I really put a lot of effort into the minimal nature of the narrative. So thanks.
And I wanted to ask Michael about the end shot with I guess they're watches around the drain and other bodily fluids, I guess.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? Was that a spot that people for some reason were all drawn to, and that's where they joined the everything? Is that why there was a pile?
Yeah,
why is there a pile of watches there?
Exactly that. In I guess the mass extinction or annihilation of those human beings who were going outside at the time, and them been eaten by the stalkers that were harassing them. That's just a place where they were drawn to, where they melted and drained out into the underground, and kind of everything was forgotten about them besides this, these ticking watches. It's like, how much time did you really think you had? Things can come unexpectedly. It was this minor theme of measurement, and time being one of those units of measurement, and the purposelessness of it when something so much larger can take you away much faster. And as you see with the main character and his own loss of concept of time, and his uncaringness for it. By the end of it, honestly, his watch was supposed to be on the grate where he died, but I was doing these special effects, and it was a one shot, and we only had one take left, and I forgot to put the watch down, so I couldn't get the shot. Otherwise, it would have tied into that and been, I guess, more thematically strong. But in the script, it was there. In the final film, I wasn't able to just reestablish that or reinforce that theme. But it's just the unit of measurement being. It can go on and on, but what good is time without someone looking at it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like if a tree falls in the forest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other questions in the chat? And I'm sorry that we have to make this one a little bit short because we've got a thing coming up, and I might just signal to the group coming up because we've got time after them, I think. Give me 1 second. Let's see, I will seed you with a question, you talk, and I will signal the other participants so we can go a little bit longer because I feel like there's more to talk about with your films, and there's people in the chat and audience. If you have more questions, please put them in there for me, and we will get to them. But for Bura, we're talking about effects and things like that. Were all of your effects practical, or was there some CGI in there? There's like the blood and the makeup effects for the goddess.
Yes. What is the question exactly?
Were all of your effects practical?
The makeup effects, yes, were practical, and in the CGI, the eye going to white and some veins particularly is seen in the man's body, and mixing the effectings and visual effects and some makeup effects. I'm thinking about two of them. It's important for the film, for the story.
Nice. Let's see. Interesting. We've been talking a lot about sound in the Q&As with how important sound becomes in a film. And the David Lynch quote about how sound is 60% of the film, the other 40% is visual. But people at home some of them are listening on headphones with their devices. And he said that Chainsaw Gothic says he uses them for gaming. So the sound feels very different for him this year, and he feels like he's noticing things that he didn't hear before. For your films, how important do you feel like the sound is to getting across the tone and mood? And do you feel like there's a detrimental effect to watching it just like in stereo as opposed to having like a surround feeling to it?
First, I think the sound and the music is important for all films, maybe except the drama, I think. But in horror, making atmosphere, it's vision and the sound. It's a mixture of the two things in horror atmosphere, and so it's important. It's in listen stereo or other devices, more speakers, I think, and we lot of making effort, making the sound effects and the original soundtracks for the movie.
Nice. Go ahead,
jump in
Kat.
there
You
too.
look like
Yeah.
you're ready.
Big shout out to our composer, Alec Brown. Michael, I'm glad you brought that up about sound. The music with the film, it's like you feel like your cup fills up from within. Like once you hear all like the music come together with your film. Something I did have fun. I might have seemed like I didn't have fun making my film. I did, but piggyback off of what you all had said, I made the creature sounds in hatchlings, the rah and all that kind of stuff, and so that was really fun. And we saved that for once filming was done. But that became a true education. My sound designer and myself did the whole thing. We did as much practical sounds as possible, bought some sounds that we had to. And that was the thing that took the longest for post, was making sure the sound was excellent, because that was the first time either of us had done post-production sound, and it was at a necessity with our budget that we just learned how to do it. And so even getting the narration to sound really good throughout, I mean, it was an education. It was in every sense of the word, and a lot of trial and error, hiring some more people to like, hey, watch this, correct this, fix this. And I don't know about you, but like listening to it, how you listen to your film, if you are listening to it in headphones or in surround speakers, and like all of that, when it comes to post, like I highly recommend, as I'm sure all of you have done, listening to it in very different ways to make sure that everything is picked up and make sure sounds great. So that was some of our biggest challenge, was making sure the sound design was not only great, but actually came out well. So that was monumental.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, do you have more to say about the sound for you?
I'd say for sound, yeah, it's the quote that David Lynch said is very much true, and in terms of the difference, the impact of this film, I think would be a lot greater in a theater atmosphere or some sort of theatrical presentation. It is mixed and mastered for 5.1, and it's supposed to have a trance-inducing, like hypnotic quality to it. And you can only get that with two things, and that's one, a massive sound system, being in a theater, and two, people around you to feel and collectively, I guess, instigate you to feel a certain way. I mean, when a crowd of people are watching something and feeling one specific, I don't know, emotion, then everyone feels it in amplified. And so it's, as much as I like people watching things alone in their room with the lights shut off, with their headphones on, I really would have preferred to have people watch this in the theater. And it is different. I've heard the difference. You pick up on different sounds. It's the difference between like watching something in 4K that you shot in 4K and bringing it down to a lower resolution. It's sound has its intricate, I guess, its gems in it for the most part. Yeah.
Nice. Christopher, you were. It seemed like you had something to say next.
Honestly, I wasn't going to say anything that hadn't already been said.
Okay.
The idea is, sound is so inextricably connected to the film going experience that without it, none of our films would be the same and none of our films would be as good. So it's just knowing that going into it. I mean, there's so much, especially when filmmakers are first starting out, with this emphasis on what look do I want to emulate, or what camera movements should I try to employ, and how cool does it look? But as all of us have experienced, once you get it in the editing bay and you're adding sound, you realize that none of those things come to life without it. So, I mean, we've all emphasized that quite a bit. It's so important.
Yeah, I think for mine as well, sound was vital because visually, like the visuals, I wanted them like quite slow moving, and I'd say like my film's not really like scary in the traditional sense. It's more, I went for like, I guess, like slow and atmospheric. Like Michael was saying, we didn't have any sound like on the shoot itself. We just had like the guide audio of the dialogue, and that was it. So everything was done in post, and we did ADR, like redid everything. So we kind of just built layer and layer. So like I kind of do like a first pass of the film and get the bass sound down, and then I kind of built layers and layers and layers to try and make it as creepy and atmospheric as possible.
Films, if they don't work in the edit without sound, they're not going to work with sound,
Yeah.
So it's important skill to have to make your film work without sound.
Have all of you gotten to see your film in a theater, like at a festival?
No.
Mine was going to be at the Pasadena International, but literally the week it was supposed to show is when everything started shutting down in LA. So I think it was like literally the day before I was supposed to go to the theater for it. So
oh my gosh.
I have not had it shown.
I had like a cast and crew screening booked at a theater at the start of April, like the 5th of April, and I think everything in England shut down like the last week of March, so it was literally like 2 weeks before. But I do have an upcoming festival in somewhere in Yorkshire on actual Halloween. My film's playing on the 31st, and they're actually doing it a socially distanced live theater. So I will get to see it because we did like a 5.1 mix. So like there's parts of creatures like growling and stuff throughout the film where, like when I watched it in the sound booth when we were editing it, it's like behind your head, like the back right of your head, you can hear some like growling, and it's like kind of moves around your head a lot, which you don't get in stereo obviously. But so it'll be exciting and it'll just be cool to watch it with people. I haven't actually seen it with people yet.
So we premiered in Albuquerque, and we got to screen at a IMAX theater at the Natural History Museum. So we got to see our film huge, and like all of you said, like the emotions of it, like at the end of our film in that oneer, like people would go and like things like that you just don't like. I'm taking for granted. I thought all of you have had your film, like you've gotten to be with your film with other people in theaters. Like that's such a good point, like the emotions of it, and we're feeling them from our homes.
It's also filling like all of your visual space. You know, you don't have the art on your walls distracting you, or your coffee table in front of you, or whatever's on the mantle. You're just looking at that one thing big in your face.
There's also the factor that a lot of us, when we initially came up with the ideas for these films, we expected them to be on the screen, right? As opposed to maybe an iPhone or a laptop or someone's living room. At least that's for me. So a lot of things are missed, not only with the 5.1 sound, like with Nicholas, there's also visual things that maybe when you were in the video village, you're like, yes, they're going to be able to see this detail, and then that is subsequently lost because literally
that's this big.
So it is different. That's all.
It's hard for us. It's really hard because, you know, one of the things we love about our host theater is that the main screen that they have is a 60-foot Cinerama screen. It's like this beautiful, like giant curved screen. A big 380 seat theater, and we love, you know, the films look great on it, and it's just amazing. They've got a 7.1 sound system. It's a historical theater that they have restored, and they can play 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, and they're like one of the only places I think they're the only place in Oregon that can play 70 millimeter and DCP. So they have all of the projection tools, and we like to throw in some classic films every now and then, and it's handy because some of those they don't like to platter. They're like, you have a changeover system, right? And we're like, yes, we actually have access to that. So hopefully, I hope that someday that we can be back in the theater and you can be there with us after everything, you know, clears up enough that we can safely film together in person again. But I think that we're going to have to stop there. I think I sent you guys all the Discord link, so please feel free to jump in and converse and like talk to the audience members, talk to each other, watch more films, and answer questions and pose questions of your own. Before we wrap up, though, I'd like to have each of you just tell us where we can find you on the internets and learn more about any of your upcoming projects or see some of your past projects. People want to find out more about you. Where do they find you? Kat?
CatJonesFilms.com. And Hatchlings just got a distributor, so I'm hoping you can see it on Amazon soon and other indie platforms. It's my first film getting distribution. I'm very happy. Really honored to be a part of this festival, Gwen. Thank you. I hope I'm pointing to you. I'm probably pointing to Bura, but anyways, yeah, thanks so much. CatJonesFilms.com. Let's connect.
Thanks. Bura, how do people find you?
They can find me on Instagram and IMDb also, but I'm generally post my new projects or other projects on Instagram page. And I'm so happy to join this festival. We are so excited when we see the news, and thank you for all of the screenings and the selections. I'm glad to hear that here.
Thank you so much for submitting your film. We hope to see more from you. Michael, where can people find you?
You can find my films and the production company that I have with some partners, and so all our films together at metalmonsterproductions.com or on Instagram, metalmonsterspro. I'm really grateful. Yeah, just like Brad said, I'm very grateful to be a part of this festival. As a world premiere, I really couldn't imagine somewhere better. I mean, you know, I had that late submission, and really I was torn between what's going on and whether or not to play a film online. And I was happy it was here, and I hope to see all of your films and to meet you all again in person next year, hopefully at this festival.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a film in the festival, you should come watch the other films and get some inspiration and meet each other. Nick, where can people find you?
I've just set up, I'm like new to Twitter and Instagram, but my Instagram is dir.nicholascole, and my Twitter is, I'm just reading it because I can't even remember my own Twitter handle. It's at nickcole_91. And I think my Facebook is just Nick Cole, but I don't really put film stuff on there. But yeah, I've just kind of just started. This is my filmmaking journey. It's my first one, so it's all quite new. And again, yeah, thanks for having me at this festival. It's awesome. It's been really cool. Yeah, I've enjoyed it also. It's been really, really awesome. And it's been cool to talk to everyone. This is my first ever Q&A as well, so it's really cool.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, and hopefully I can make another film at some point. I've been writing some scripts. We'll get there. But yeah, it was cool seeing everyone's films, talking to everyone. It was really cool. I said cool a lot.
Cool. Christopher?
Yeah, so I'm all over the place. I actually host a podcast and I'm an audio engineer on another one, Hollywood Hangover. You guys can go find that on iTunes or any podcast app. I co-host that. Talk about all kinds of film industry stuff. And the other one I do audio engineering for is called Postmortem with Mick Garris. And it has the one and only Mick Garris as the host. He interviews everybody from, we've interviewed Stephen King to Ari Aster to, we had Guillermo del Toro a few episodes ago. It's been really great. You can also find me at my website, clpfilm.com. And thanks again, Gwen, for all the things that you've done. You said you haven't gotten any sleep. I hope you get some sleep soon. And I hope to see all the other filmmakers that were part of the panel as well in the future. I really hope our paths cross again.
Thank you, all of you. All right. Thank you so much, audience members, for your great questions. You guys are awesome. And these guys, I think, are probably gonna hang out in Discord with you at some point. So look for them. And we've got next up, we have a tribute to Joe Pulver with a few folks that are waiting for me to wrap this up so that we can start that. But we can go late with that one. It's fine. So thank you again, all the filmmakers, for being here and trusting us with your films and trusting us to present them in a way that is, beneficial to you and treats your films with the respect that they deserve, because that's the whole reason why we're here. And the festival aspect of it, having you guys here is really important to us, because otherwise we would just be watching films in our house.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.